Well, I have to say, you're going to love this guest. On today's episode of the What Works podcast, we have a filmmaker who's been telling powerful stories for over 22 years. She has work that's aired on PBS, Discovery, and E! Entertainment. But here's what really sets her apart. Back in 2014, she founded the Storyboard Project, giving young people with foster care experience a platform to share their stories in their own words. The Storyboard Project has been featured by Peace4Kids, The Imprint, PBS SoCal, and more. It also racked up some serious recognition along the way, including a Telly, Communicator Award, and Fostermorey's Content Creator of the Year. From 2008 to 2022, she's basically running the show at USC. First as Executive Director of Video Production at Dornsife, then as Chief Creator Content Officer at Annenberg, putting out hundreds of short films, picking up awards left and right. She's got a film degree from Cal State Northridge, a master's in professional writing from USC, and she still finds time to sit on the board of Peace4Kids. So please, let's welcome Mira Zimet.
We keep it calm, keep it cool.
Keep it first.
Kids feel safe, staff stay strong on the turf. Call us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How you doing, Mira?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're all over the place, traveling, working, workshops.
Yep.
What have you been up to lately? What's been going on? Bring everybody up to speed.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm still, doing stories with the Storyboard Project, and so doing some traveling. Actually, I'm kind of mentoring a young woman who I had done a story with last summer. She's up in San Jose. And so it's interesting how some of the young people that I've interviewed kind of end up staying in my life, in different ways. Some of them on, that I've had relationships with before, but she's kind of reached out and been trying to be like a bit of a sounding board for her. She's going through a bit of a struggle. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. So, just kind of doing the best I can with that. Right. But yeah, so things are really good. And I do, in addition to the storyboard, I actually do some writing for an organization called A Place Called Home, which is another really cool, if we talk about community, they're in South LA and they came in after the Rodney King riots. So they're giving young people a place to go after school and teaching them whatever they want to learn. Right. So and so I do some writing for their end of year newsletter. So yeah, so it's good.
How did the Storyboard Project get started? Like I spent all day one day on your website, and I probably shouldn't have. There's so many great stories, but I couldn't help myself.
So it actually started, I read a book by Janet Finch called White Oleander, and that was like maybe 2000, early 2000s. And then a little later, like probably 2010, I read another book called The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbauer. And I was just like, this isn't right. This isn't fair. What was happening to youth. And both of them really did talk about youth transitioning out of foster care. So it stuck with me. And I remember even talking to one of my kids saying, we should mentor a young person, And so kind of time passes and it's in my head though. And I'm working at USC and we're doing a big campaign and I'm prepping some of the young students who are going to be speaking. And one of them was this young woman named Jasmine. And Jasmine happened to have a foster care experience. So we were talking about what she was going to say, how you can, be strategic in your storytelling, et cetera, and all of that kind of stuff. And even little things like, I'm like, do you have anything to wear? And she's like, not really. So she and I went and I got her a dress. And but then she was still like, who is this person? But we stayed connected and I would take her to lunch and just kind of stayed in her life. And then all of these, I kind of was at a point where I had been doing video most of my adult life. And I thought I wanted to do something. I had done some documentaries in the past. And I wanted to do something that was kind of, I felt a passion for. And I thought I went with her and a friend of hers. And I said, what do you think if I did videos and let young people tell their stories? At that point, there were a few things out, like It Gets Better, where people were doing little videos about the LGBTQ plus community where they were actually doing the videos. And so the young people in that community. And I thought, well, what if, they're not going to have access to all this stuff. What if I just let them tell their stories? And they're like, that's a good idea. And so that's how it kind of got born. And it was just like one coincidence after another in terms of how I met people, because I didn't know anybody, except for her. Yeah. So so that's kind of the origin of how it started.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that, what initially started this journey for you was the art that wasn't like necessarily produced by individuals in that community or who had lived those experiences necessarily. And then that moment ignited in you this passion for understanding that community. And as you said, like those circumstances, those happenstances just led you to individuals in that community with this skill set of storytelling that you could share with them and empower them to really kind of tell their stories and give them that channel to do so.
That's exactly it. Because I really would say I'm just the conduit. This is your story. I'm not, I'll prompt you with questions, we'll take it in whatever direction. And it was really from the beginning, this is your story. We talk a little bit beforehand about what it is you wanted to talk about. I also said, you're going to see, because they would post on YouTube and on my website, you're going to see it before it posts. And if there's anything you don't want on there, it's out. And there were a couple times where that happened. When one young man, after the interview, he said, I said something about my foster mom. And I probably wouldn't have put it in anyways. But I'm like, it's out. I'm not going to cause any harm. This is and I feel like that really helped them and helped empower them too. And like I said, just because I had that skill. So it was like, I'm going to take this skill and hopefully do it for good,
That's interesting because that population of kiddos, they're not used to being able to call the shots.
Yep.
And that, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But they don't get to call the shots. And so you empower them not only to tell their story, but you get to control the narrative of it.
Yep.
That's huge, Myra.
No, it was, and there was one young man, who, like, there's a lot, of young people who stayed with me, but he was one of the early ones, and he had never told his story to anybody. And it was just like, and he told the story, and I heard from him years later that he actually ended up writing a book. He's like, I really like telling my story. And so he wrote a book, and he's doing amazing now. And it's just like, it's just like somebody listened, somebody cares, somebody wanted to hear what you had to say about your journey. So yeah. And it was, and there were a few, there wasn't very many, but one or two where, I think only one where if they decided at the end they didn't want to do the story, it wouldn't go up. It's like, I'm not, Yeah. It is, so.
I'm just kind of struck by like, you talking about being that conduit for them, but also that mentor sometimes, right? Yeah. And that you are a example of both the like strength of being able to tell your story, but also the vulnerability that requires. And like, that to you, it's not about like, oh, their story needs to get out there. It's about, this is an experience for them to both feel strong and feel vulnerable and understand that those aren't opposites and they can coexist.
You're right.
Because as you said, there's that one young man who's like, look, if this never gets out, if this never is put out, that's not the point of this. Like, it's that your story matters and that like there's something that is transformative in being able to come to a place where you can share that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that kind of come about for you? Like what did you kind of stumble upon for yourself where you realized the kind of strength and vulnerability and kind of art?
I think one of the things that surprised me was how vulnerable people were, and willing to open up. And I knew that I was going to strategically edit this. Like I knew that I, as a parent, as an employer, that there was nothing going in that video that we either hadn't discussed or it just was like, you wouldn't want somebody to know about because it's a video, it's going online. It could last for a long time. So it's like, I just knew me and I knew I was going to be careful because young kids are going to say whatever they're going to say, especially when they're just, and they're not even like thinking that there's anything wrong with some of the things they're going to say. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going in this video, but thank you for sharing it with me, and so I think it was definitely the vulnerable. And this is a funny story. I ended up interviewing a a superior court judge in Los Angeles. I don't even remember how I found, amazing woman, told me her story, edited, sent it off to her. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said all that stuff. We redid it. We redid it. And it's like, there's no, and again, it's just my own ethics. It's like, there's no reason to not do it for all the right reasons. So, but yeah, so it has gone, there's like mentors, there's friendships, there's, just they're all in my heart,
It's interesting because that therapeutic sense of being able to tell your story almost like what the judge did and just let it all hang out probably was probably a processing that needed to happen for years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Just to be able to have that opportunity to do that.
And it's funny because you think as a judge and a lawyer.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't, and I'm like, it's nowhere, but you're right. She had to say it. And I think when she realized, it was maybe a wow moment for her, like to think about whatever she was talking about, how that would be perceived. And maybe she didn't want that to be perceived the way it maybe was. So, yeah.
Now, I didn't count how many stories you have on there. There's a ton. Do you find that there's some, maybe some running themes? Not so much themes, but a lot of similarities in the stories.
Yeah.
And maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
Honestly, the similarities are love.
Yeah.
The similarities, and it's all these universal themes. And that, I think, if anything, is the thing that I'm trying to get across is belonging, safety, love, respect, all those things that we all want. There should be no reason to think that young people don't want them too, whether they're your biological children who are living at home with you, or, obviously a youth who's in foster care. So it's like they want somebody to listen. That's like the big lesson, it's just, and that's what I was doing. So it helped, but just somebody to listen and somebody to care. And they know right away if they go into a home, if that person cares about them or doesn't care about them, is going to be there, is going to have their back or is not. And, so that's, we have all the other things we need, the support, in a lot of different areas, but it's those fundamental, universal love, listening, caring, respect.
Yeah.
The ones that have it, to whatever degree, are a little bit easier on the road to success, but that's what they ask for. That's the main message that comes through.
I think, first, thank you for giving, those kids, those individuals who've been through difficult experiences, the space to feel comfortable enough to share those things, right? I think one, for them as individuals, but two, as you were kind of saying, that recognition that universally, even underneath those challenging or difficult behaviors, they're all attempts to meet those needs that you voiced, or, attempts to not feel so vulnerable because those needs are being threatened.
Yeah.
And, that's the commonality between our work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the universality between us all, is we're all looking for those things. And in your work with the Storyboard Project, like allowing people the space to share their stories, right? Whereas with the youth that we often work with, they're not yet at the place where they understand or can share their stories. So we're just trying to do that dance of like, we know you've got these needs, and we know that you don't really know how to ask or to meet them, safely or gently. And that, it's just cool to, talk with you and learn about just another example of the universality of our humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes sitting down, like, how's it going? Just like, tell me what's going on, just like what we're doing. It's just, that's all somebody wants. You have children, it's like, they just want to, they don't want you to talk to them. They want you to talk with them. Right.
Yeah.
So
film as opposed to information. Well, why is film so important? I get it because, I just spoke on it a little bit with the judge right there, and being able to document it a different way. But why is film so much important?
So when you think of foster care is bureaucracy, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of statistics, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of facts, how many young people are in foster care, how many people age out, so there's a lot of information. And I'm going to get there. There's I forget the name of the journalist, but he was talking about a hurricane. And he says, I don't want to know the facts. I don't want to know, how strong the winds were. I want to hear the story of the person on the raft who was, being saved, or who was with their kid and their dog. Because the reality is when you get to know somebody, that's where your empathy goes in.
Yeah.
Right. And we're talking about authentic storytelling. These are their stories that they're sharing. And so it's one person's story. So it's not this, and then, 350,000 young people are in foster care this year. Because it's just like, what do you do with that? What do you do with that you can't do anything with that number.
Yeah.
But if you are sitting there listening to a young person saying, this is my journey, and then maybe along the way, this is the person who I thought had my back. It was a counselor, it was a teacher, it was somebody in their church, somebody in their religion, somebody in their neighborhood, maybe a relative, so, and I trusted that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, wait, like that's my part, is the education. Like, I want somebody to have that aha moment. I want somebody to say, well, I have somebody in my life who's got a foster care experience. I've seen them struggling, maybe I'll just check in with them, see how they're doing. So it's that one-to-one, that empathy, that hearing somebody's story, the educational part of it, those are like the main things why, and while I do think podcasts also, you're hearing their voices, but I think seeing some of these young people's faces adds a whole nother element to what you may have thought and perceived and had a bias towards, thinking this kid might be a criminal, this kid might be a drug addict, this kid might be this or that. And you're looking at them and they're telling you their story with their heart, and you're like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's what I'm hoping to do. I want to repack and just say, look how amazing this young person is. You're just so beautiful, and you have this story, and through no fault of your own, this is where you are, and here's what you're doing. And then maybe somebody who's watching it, either as somebody who is in care, could say, well, they did this, they reached out, that person helped them, or somebody who has the capacity to be that person to help, So that's it's kind of a double hope.
I know when I was sitting there watching the stories, all of a sudden, let's say the kid's name's Jason. All of a sudden, I'm Team Jason. I'm like, what's Jason doing now? You get like that.
Yeah.
You've got a name, a face, the sound of their voice.
Yeah. No, I know.
I think, when you're talking about kind of, the information, we now live in an age where information is more accessible than ever, but it kind of drowns out the story, which ironically is the thing that makes the larger impact, right?
Yeah.
I think the statistics are important in the arenas they're important in, but in changing, backing up your perspective, stats are great, right? Changing someone's perspective, I think the statistics are often a lot harder to kind of wield those in a way. Whereas often when you learn someone's story, it's just kind of like that, oh, okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
What do you think that does for, or what do you know that does for the individuals whose story is doing that work, right? Are they aware of the impact that their stories are having on others?
I think some of them are. I mean, some young people I've interviewed have already been, they are working in child welfare now. They're at whatever degree, some of them are on their way to be social workers. Some of them are working as advocates. So I think they have learned the power of their story, which is great. And then there's a young man that I interviewed in Kentucky, and I was doing some work with the Journey to Success. So I just there's a whole nother person who's involved in this in the beginning that can share later on. But that he introduced me to this journey to success, and they were using these videos to show to legislators because they're again trying to enact changes. And again, it's those. Here's the story of a young person, and this is what helped them. And boy, it would help if we got more money so we could help other people kind of stories. And he told his story super heartfelt, and he got called into DC to present in front of legislators. Now, maybe they would have known him, maybe they wouldn't, but they saw him, they saw this video, they saw his heart. And, whether he's enacted changes or not, I don't know, but it's hard to hear some of these stories and not want to do what you can to help, or that's the hope, I guess, in my optimistic mind.
That's interesting because when you think about transitional youth, when they age out, like, do you ever get to hear from them again? Where are they now? Your stories really keep them in front of everybody's face. I was telling Jacob and Jason that I saw one of the kids from my old facilities that I used to run downtown Long Beach. He glassed over, not in good condition. And it's just like, wow, aged out and he's struggling.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, he's not the topic of conversation anymore because he's not with us.
Yeah.
And he's an adult now trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And by himself.
Yep.
It is, it's a great reminder to see those stories and make you want to either reach out or just think about some of the other ones and, maybe even just throw a prayer up for them or something.
Yeah.
But it's something that really does keep the stories. I think it keeps the conversation going, for one. I know that it does that for me. What about the transitional youth? That was one thing I couldn't wait to talk to you about because I was trying to really key in on that and on a lot of the stories that you're doing. What are some of the things they talk about transitioning out of the system, like housing and some of those challenges? Because I know once they get to college, in between semesters and stuff, it is chaos just trying to find housing.
Yep. And that's all of it, I mean, it's the support. It's both. It's the emotional support. It's the financial support. It's the mental health support. I mean, so if you're talking about financial stuff, those are things that the state and federal government can help with, So it's, well, first of all, I'll go to emotional too. It's also these guardian scholar programs that a lot of schools have that are great. But as far as the federal, where, how much can you help, with their tuition? In a lot of states, and I think our state too, does help a lot, if not completely help with tuition. But also where do they go, during the summer break? So again, using USC, Jasmine, who was one of the, like I said, the person who kind of started me on this road, they had children guardian scholars, and they advocated so that youth who in USC who were in care could stay in the dorms. So they did a lot of, they let people know this is what's going on. You're here. This is, USC is, all about the Trojan family. And it's like some of our family members have nowhere to go in the summer and during Christmas break or the holiday break. So it's like, again, it's the education. So you've got, and the emotional support. So it's like the Trojan or the Guardian Scholars programs, or there's a lot of organizations out there, so it's, to me, a lot of it is also like, how are we giving the information to these young people about all the organizations? And the other side of the coin is they're like done. A lot of them, some of them are like, yeah, I'm taking advantage of all the great resources that are available. And some of them are like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it's like sometimes the people who come in during the transition are easier to deal with than maybe your social worker might have been. Because they're all there for, I'm here to give you this good thing. I'm here to give you that good thing. And you're not like dealing with your foster parents or what everybody's perceptions are. So they're like, let me help you get this, loan, or let me help you, get into this program. So I feel like if they knew that the transitional people seem, that at least the stories that I've heard are generally more, or are more compassionate, maybe that's not maybe the best word, but that's kind of, you know what I mean? They're there for the different reasons than maybe your social worker was when you were 13 or 14, So,
That's what I was about to say. They're more present. That's more for present. Sure.
And they're all trying to give you good stuff. Like, let me help you get into this house. Let me help you get, So
I think kind of with the work that we've been doing and talking about, what I'm hearing is they're not in a position of power that makes it easier to instruct. They're in a position of collaboration that makes the presence
100%.
the primary sort of thing, right? You're there because where else would I be?
Yeah.
Right. Whereas when you're in a role, and this is a challenge in residential care, you're there in a role of authority.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to let that go and be there, yes, still with the responsibility, but not to lead with it, right? But to lead with the collaboration.
Yeah.
And I would assume that that's part of why you've been successful in the work that you've done, is because it's driven by passion. It's driven by this desire to collaborate and be that conduit. And it doesn't come from a place of like, not that being a director is a bad thing, but like being a director and trying to get actors, actresses, like your part players to play the part you want them to. None of that is present in the role that you're facilitating with them, because it's all about how can I help you tell your story.
And the other thing that's been really great is that I am my own little organization, whatever, but I'm not working for anybody. So it's not like they're telling the story for, Foster Kids of America. So you need to cry, or you need to, let us know how, so we can get more money. So there's none of that. There's none of, they talk about organizations that help them, but it's their choice to talk about it or not talk about it, And so, and if they do talk about it, then the organization could have that video and it's show, but it's not a requirement. It's not like you're here, I'm asking you to do a video for me because I am this organization, I need to raise money, and you're my poster child for how amazing you are. In which case, and not saying that people don't do it and they don't do it for the right reasons, because those organizations need money, but I don't have any of that. Right. So they can talk about 3 organizations that help them. They could talk about, so that's another piece that really makes me happy, because it's like, I don't have an agenda with you, Yeah. So
I think that's gratefully the field is doubling down and recognizing the importance of the voice of the individuals who are supported, serviced, whatever the appropriate term is, within the systems of care that we've set up. And I'm glad to see that, because there is the question of obligation and the power dynamics when the individuals sharing their voices are still at the whims of the system, so to say. And so for there to be, art coming in that allows the restrictions to be removed entirely, right? The art does whatever art needs to do, right? And so I love that, in a way, you're doing work for the good of the systems that will forever be free of the influences of the systems, right? Which is in the best interest of the kids, and the now transitioning adults. And I just love that there are those unique sort of cool partnerships that can happen. That isn't ever you being part of a system. Right. It's you doing what you're here to do. These kids being able to gain something personally from that process that you're walking them through, but that also the systems that we are a part of can gain pure feedback as to how well we're doing or how we need to improve.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so you do that through Storybook Project?
Storyboard, yeah.
Storyboard, excuse me. You mentioned another one as well that you worked with.
That was the other organization.
But that's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
Got it.
Down that road.
Got it. So through Storyboard, you're providing them that avenue to tell their story. What are some of the things you've seen them go on and do? You mentioned somebody written a book as well. Do you feel like this Storyboard project has launched new projects for the individuals that have come through it?
Oh, that's probably a great question, but also one that I probably don't have the answer to. I know that there's people that I've worked with. There's one person I'm going to give him a shout out. When I first started it was I think 2014, and sometime that it was like in July or whatever. I was on Twitter at the time, and I got a tweet from this kid named Six to Cancel. And he's like, he was also working, he's living in DC, is still in college, had a foster care experience. And he was coming out, he was starting to get very connected in wanting to do advocacy work, had started an organization called Think of Us. And he and I ended up partnering, and because he was doing storytelling, and he's taken Think of Us like all, I mean, it had nothing to do with me, although I was there at the beginning, and I was, again, a mentor, also an advocate for him and the work he was doing. And I was gonna say, one of the things that was really interesting, and this was also a storyboard thing, is he had happened to be, we were working together, and he was at the White House for something, I don't remember what, some event he was at, and he's just a good kid, not a kid anymore, but he had his computer. He saw some woman who didn't look like she went with the rest of the people who were at this event, went over to her, introduced himself. She was the Secretary of Education at the time, showed her one of the videos I did, and she was like, this is great. And so it was a takeoff point for him. So, and then he got like an award, Champions of Change, and I went out with him to DC. And like I said, we worked together for a number of years, and got involved with a lot of other organizations that were doing good things for care. So, and they're just people you talk to, and Jasmine also, I'm still in her life. I gave her a wedding shower. You know what I mean? So we actually became non-relative caregivers. So this might be the piece to tell that. So,
That was my next.
yeah, one of the things I was, the same year that I started, and we're talking about all the different coincidences, two people basically within the same week told me about this guy named Zaid Gale, and Zaid runs Peace4Kids, which is in South LA. And so my sister knew somebody who knew somebody, and we ended up going to lunch, and I went toward Peace4Kids and started as a volunteer, and then ended up getting on their board. And I met a number of young people, but one young woman specifically, her name is Mira, and she, again, just kind of mentor, took her to lunch, chit chat, she's an amazing artist. And so kind of showed her some video stuff because she was doing some stop motion. And then she told me about her sister. She has two sisters, and they all had foster care experiences as younger children. And she was in transitional housing. She had moved out. The middle sister, and I'll be brief, but the middle sister was going into a really bad situation with a foster situation. And so she was just telling me, she was crying, and I talked to my husband, like, you know what, let's just do it. We became non-relative caregivers for her, and she was in her last year of high school, and got her through high school, got her the SATs, got her into college, took her there, got her moved in. She had someplace to go, obviously, through it anytime she was back, for the different summers and holidays and stuff like that. And then her younger sister she turned 18 after COVID, Wendy, and Wendy came to live with us, which is, I don't even know how it happened.
That's awesome.
And then same thing, got Wendy into school, and both of them graduated from prestigious schools. But it's just, when Laura I was probably more that emotional support. Wendy knew we were there, but she wasn't one of those kids that called on you as much. But Laura's like, you can do this, you got this, And so we did kind of put our money where our mouth was. I don't remember what your question was, but so, and yeah, it was.
Well, I was going to say, from the outside looking in, everybody said, oh, well, here's a filmmaker. She's behind the camera. She's done the work. Like, she's already done it all, and I was going to let them know, because if you don't search and do your research to find that one interview where you talk about it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome. Both of them went to Ivy League schools.
Yeah. But Laura went to Barnard, and Wendy went to Vassar.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's sad because I talked to Mira. Mira had gotten into a school in the South. I think it was in Atlanta. And she had an unfortunate situation, and she had no support.
Mm-hmm.
And so she dropped out. And, she's, like I said, an amazing artist. So there's no, but again, like, maybe if she had the support, or maybe she had somebody's ear, she would have had another way to have processed it through and worked through it and figured it out. And maybe she would have decided to stay. And there's no way to know. And again, her career trajectory is great. So it's fine. But, it's like you need, I mean, I went through school. I went to college, and I like being able to call my mom and say, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this,
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that's all it is. Like, you got this.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with Jacob because I've been reaching out to a lot of the Guardian scholars from all the surrounding colleges. And between reading a lot of their own literature that they've been posting and just the stuff that I already know, Jacob was like, well, what is it that they need? I said, we need a body. We need someone that's going to be there to help them move in.
Yeah.
Someone they can call. It's like you can get all the resources that you want, but that one body is crucial. It's crucial,
Yep.
And it's a piece that I just think that a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people, whether they're empty nesters, their kids are gone, and they're looking to serve the community a certain way. There's your opportunity.
Absolutely.
Help them, I don't know, find a job in between semesters, or maybe you're just mentoring them on life.
Yep.
And just being there to be available.
Yeah.
And present.
Yeah. But it's like, until you have a kid who goes to college and you go on move-in day and you see everybody there with their parents, and you're not there with a parent, or with somebody who.
With somebody.
And both of them had, we were there and we're getting the bedspreads and making the bed and doing all the stuff. But, it's.
Yeah, it's different experience.
They're moments, that you want somebody there for you.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you can't survive without it, but it sure makes it, a little nicer.
Yeah.
I'm struck by, again, kind of your example of vulnerability and in being courageous enough to step into those situations, but also like allowing your life to be changed by those circumstances, right? I feel like in our field, sometimes I'm like, man, I hope the kids that I helped care for got as much out of this as I did, right? And I hear that same sort of experience with you.
Sure.
It's like, but we have such a privilege to be able to step into their lives for whatever time we do, or as a guardian through schooling, or taking them in, or just making their bed when they're moving into college, whatever the case may be. But it is such a cool opportunity, and I love that you've found a number of ways to be involved.
Yeah.
And to kind of both tell their story but be a part of their story as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a lot of learning. There's one of the things you had written, but like patience, like that was a big thing. Patience, and also like not trying to control it or fix it. So, I'm not an AA. I don't have issues with alcohol, but the Serenity Prayer came in really handy a lot, because it's like, it's tough.
The parenting prayer. We can retitle it.
The parenting prayer. Yeah,
that's really
it
what
was the parenting prayer, because it was like,
I used that last week.
Yeah. What was I do? Because you're just like, but I don't know. I just, again, it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes back to those universal things that you were saying everybody needs, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, as caregivers or parents or whatever role we're in, right? It's finding the way that we can help them feel and achieve those sort of things, right? And
feel love, feel cared for, feel, that they can go and do it, Well,
listened to, like you said, like a lot of it sounds like a lot of those relationships for you started out in the kind of like director's chair, right?
Yeah.
But that in that role, you were still making them feel important and safe and listened to, heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the hope.
Yeah.
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 I feel like it. I was able to do that. I really care. I don't have to, I'm not getting paid to do this, So, Journey to Success did support me for a little bit, but it's not probably 10, 12 years of just like, I just want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I have all the stuff, I have the talent, and I have the passion. So it just felt like, and that's why I said when things fell into place, it was like they were meant to be.
Yeah.
You just can't help but feel that way. We just randomly meet all these people, and I would get emails from people saying, if you're ever in, because then I started. So after the pandemic, my husband and I got a trailer, and we're going around the country. And then I started doing stories of youth around the country, because it felt again like, not that traveling in and of itself wasn't great, but it's like, well, I can extend this and hear what are happening in other states. And that was actually really cool. And I did share that with Journey to Success, and I've shared it in other places. But the idea that, well, this state's doing this is actually really cool. Why, and so, I lost my train of thought. So we're traveling. What was the question? I'm sorry.
It wasn't so much a question. We were just kind of talking about like, you were in this role as director, and like you kind of just went with it, and you found these relationships, and that you were kind of providing this care for folks. And so it sounds like you were just honestly following the story of, well, how are we taking care of these kids? How are we, and like that traveling, sure, great, but like, but how are we taking care of these kids? Like that's what drew drew you state to state was, well, what are they doing over here? How are they doing it better?
Yeah.
How can we figure out how best to do care? And let me hear directly from these youth who have experienced it, or now maybe adults or adolescents. What did they think worked?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that again, that passion is what drew you.
Yeah.
And again, that art is,
Yeah.
leading the way in us understanding, how to care better for folks.
Yeah.
Any opportunity of a full-length documentary? I just saw all the different pieces. I go, she has to have one in the can, or she's working on something.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing because I've thought about it a lot, and I've done documentaries in the past.
Yeah.
And I think I just have to get my head out of it's not my story.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the main thing, because something will happen, and it will be, because I want it to not feel like I'm telling a story that isn't mine to tell, but that there's an arc in there. And maybe it's the arc of even some of the things you were even talking about, the idea that how are we telling these stories so that we could have systemic changes. Right. So maybe that, now that you say that, it's actually a good idea.
Well, it was interesting because like I said, I got to the end of it, on YouTube, if you're watching something, they'll say the next one that's coming up. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to read the rest about Dominic. Like, what's going on? Where's Dominic at?
I know.
They're that good, and like I said, I don't suggest anybody do this. I did this all in one day. I watched every single one. I was so raw. I mean, emotionally, it was very touching. There was a young lady that was sharing her art while she was doing.
That's Mira. That's
right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Amazing artwork, and I was like, look at this. Just look at this stuff.
And she was so interesting because in the beginning of her, when I first started to know her art was very violent. She had talons and violent, and then now everything is soft, and she's doing ceramics and. We talk about that. Talk about art as healing. And again, that's one of the things like, oh, I'm an artist. Why don't I try art as healing? What can I heal from my experience by dancing or singing or drawing, whatever it is. So I feel like, again, that's always been my goal of every video is like kind of where you came from, where you're at now. But in the middle, who was there?
Yeah.
Was it faith? Was it a counselor? Was it a mentor? Was it grit? Your own determination? I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And definitely people talked about that.
Yeah.
But who's in the middle?
I think those videos that you're creating with them, though, that is a co-created piece of art, right?
It is.
And that their opportunity, not necessarily from that point forward, but is to recognize and live their life as art, like as something that they can cultivate. And documentary is like life is art, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's really fun that you're looking at this idea of like, okay, well, now Mira is creating art for herself and that it's healing, but that you're creating art with them, and it is healing.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's not a therapy session, right?
Right.
But
Well,
it's
that's what I was-
creative, but art is therapeutic.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that those stories that you created, but that I love that you're using art to heal them too, right? That's what those videos were.
Yeah.
Yes, again, they're usable, digestible for us in this field, in this systems, as valuable feedback, but then also individually, apart from anything else, if we never saw them, it still would have been worth it.
Yeah.
And that may be my question to you guys is, what did you pull from them that will maybe help you in or in the work that you do?
I know for me, like one of the biggest things for me was growing up, I think that really kept me focused and probably out of trouble and juvenile hall, was sports. I played sports year round since I was 6 years old, all the way up until I was about 23, 24 years old. And anytime a kid, I got a referral packet on a young man or a young lady, I always wanted to know what their extracurricular activities were. And a lot of times you didn't see a lot of information about that. Just a lot of diagnoses, things, behaviors. That's not who the kiddo is. So I would want to try to find and push them either into something or get them to divulge what they used to do to try to get them involved in something. I knew if they had something to hold on to, there's some hope. And that's always been my thing. I just want to try to find something that they can, sink their teeth into, take their mind off, maybe escape a little bit while they're in this certain period of their life, because it's not forever. And I think that's sometimes, it feels like that sometimes. Yeah. And next thing you know, 18 comes or 21, 22.
Yeah.
And they've got to be able to have some resilience and a way to gain some resilience. And you're going to get that through some of these extracurricular activities and gain some confidence.
Yeah.
That's how I've always tried to do it.
Well, I'm glad he gave me something hopeful to spin off of, which is also why he's in the position he's in, because we're good complementary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking, this is these kids' origin stories, and we don't give it the weight that we should in regards to that. I'm not saying parental guilt is an awesome thing. I'm not saying parental anxiety is an awesome thing, or the way to do this. But man, we have an opportunity to make their origin story, their the story they tell, if they have kids, their kids about their childhood, right? Yeah. I don't think we reflect on how significant an opportunity we have to make it amazing, right? It is a job in our field, right? And I think that it is how we earn a living, but that it shouldn't be a job, right? It should be something more significant.
Yeah.
And yes, we should be professionals about it and do our best to make it kind of a gross understatement of significance, perfect our craft, so to say. But we should take the importance of it upon ourselves in terms of how well we should want to practice it. Yeah. But we should make it such a joyful and wonderful experience because it is their childhood, right?
Yeah.
There's a few things, and you touched on it when you were saying origin story, but you probably know this, but you got Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, they all have, in one way or another, as well as Storm. There's a few others who have this foster care experience, and people watch those movies and they're, even, whenever there's a movie in the positive sense of somebody in care, somebody who's an orphan who's has this great, moment, everybody's rooting for them and they make millions upon billions of dollars at the box office.
Yeah.
But when they see young people, they're being perceived differently. But the other part of it is, which is, to me, it feels the same way as if you're an adult and somebody moves you from your home and says, this is, your new parents, you need to call them mama and dada. This is your new school or workplace. This is you have all the friends you had are no longer your friends. This may or may not be where you can, go to church or whatever you practice, but don't cry and don't be sad and don't have any depression and don't have any mental health issues. And you're as an adult, we'd freak out. We couldn't handle it. And and so to expect a young child of any age to be okay with it and not be like, we know this sucks or whatever. But we're here. And that's, going back to what all organizations and all foster parents and all social workers, like we know this is not what you would hope for or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But this is what we're going to do to help. We're your parent, right? I mean, if the state's your parent, you're a ward of the state. And then at 18, they're like, oh, well, bye-bye. And one of the kids said something I thought I loved. He was like, they didn't think your parents could take care of you. So they took you from your parents and then they've given you no support. And now you're 18, like, well, you know what to do. You're like, how? My own parents didn't know what to do. You took me from them. So it's just a weird, twisted, like, mindset of like, none of it really makes sense. And that's for me, that's where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. There's so much injustice. We had talked in the past about the Enneagram. And as an Enneagram 8, it's like, this is not fair. This is not right. And, whatever I'm doing, whatever people are doing, I mean, there's organizations out there who are there to help. There's communities who are there. And I guess my plea would be, if you're seeing these or you're hearing this, take another look. If you have somebody coming in who's for a job or looking in an apartment, or just take another look and just say, give them, and the benefit of the doubt. I'll just, as an aside, this kid Felix I interviewed a few years ago in Oregon, Phoenix. Yeah. He was, I don't even know how they focus on it on Facebook, and he was moving to an area where my mom used to live, a small area. And I was like, hi, hope you're well. My mom used to live there, blah, blah, blah. And so he he got a great job, but he had no money. And the job that he got was going to give him like first and last month's rent, but he needed an apartment and he didn't have good credit. So he's like trying to figure it out. And I'm like, just like, think positive. I was just kind of like, you can make this happen. You got this great job. Just think positive. And whatever happened, I don't know how she found it, but this landlord watched the video I did with him, or we did. And she's like, oh, I used to work with foster youth and I'm going to rent you the apartment. And you're just like, oh, yay. Like, that's when you talk about, like, even if that was the only thing that happened over all of this, that he had a chance to get an apartment because somebody saw who he really was as a person and not who he was as a statistic or whatever. That's the hope.
Yeah.
So
we've been talking about that too, about as far as the community, just understanding all the resources and that are available, not just to even just foster kids, it's for everybody. And I think when they realize what is out there and what's available, it really opens their eyes as to also areas where they can help and where they can contribute. And also, just giving someone a leg up, paying it forward a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To speak a tiny bit on the Enneagram, I think you're out there and able to show people the power and the like benefit of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Like in that story you shared, he got that apartment because he was vulnerable. Now it's in a weird roundabout sort of way, right? It's not
absolutely.
It's not like he went to somebody. And I'm not advocating people do this. Like, it's not like he went to somebody to rent an apartment. It's like, oh my God, I'm a foster kid, or I've been in a foster care circumstance. Like, that wasn't,
right.
But like your ability to make it safe for him to do so is, I'm sure, something that, like, in a funny way, paid off in a very real way. It's just awesome. And to kind of your point about like how people can help and contribute, everybody's got a different thing they can teach, right? And I love that you are teaching the power of vulnerability, like through, they're telling their stories and like coming to grips with their stories. And I know I kind of fumbled the language a second ago, so I want to be intentional about it because I love the way you said it. You've been saying foster care experience, is that correct? And I love that it's an intentional, overt refusal to define them by that experience. And so I just wanted to call that out.
Or a foster child.
Or a foster child, right? Yeah. That's not who they are. They had a foster care experience. Yeah. It's not their story. It's a part of their story, and it's not who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to call out that. I love the language on that. And I caught it earlier.
But it's all like learning, you know, and they've taught me that,
Yeah.
you know, and that's all just, it's listening.
Yeah.
Like how do you want to be? And again, and that experience doesn't define you, and kind of hopefully learning that, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's
But-
really cool because you're also teaching them how they want to be seen.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, well, I want to be seen. Well, how they get to
Yeah.
control the story.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't understand that they were already controlling it, but they didn't understand that they were
Yeah.
projecting whatever it is they're projecting. And you could see it in the work that they knew they were making a conscious choice,
Yeah.
you know, when they were telling their story. Storyboard Project. What's on the horizon? What are you sketching, game planning? What's on deck?
Well, one of the things that I was doing some work with Journey to Success, and one of the things they had asked for was just to see if people were interested in talking about what was going on with their mental health and wellness, what they were doing for self-care. So we started asking these questions both in California and around the nation. And, you know, as you would expect, there was a lot of deficit in terms of what they were doing for their mental health and wellness. And, you know, they might have a few things they were doing for self-care, but it wasn't consistent and it wasn't helping. So it just was one of those, again, like a little bit of an aha moment, like maybe we can do something else. So I work with an educator and a healer basically, and we came up with this box called Leaning Into Me. And in it, we have all these tools where you can go and kind of learn about yourself by yourself, you know, or you can work with other people if you wanted to as well. But the idea was that if you know yourself, then things become a little bit easier. And even if you're, you know, if you're in therapy and there's a booklet in there called the Enneagram, and it's just, the Enneagram is just kind of a personality, but it's a personality based on where you are when you're in stress. And so if you see, you kind of sense who you are, then maybe you go to the therapist and say, hey, I'm this number or whatever, but here's where I am when I'm not in my strengths. Here's where my challenges are. So instead of a therapist saying to you, well, this or that, you can say, well, as a 9, I sometimes put my head in the sand when there's a conflict. And well, maybe what tools can I then use? So you're kind of, again, in power, in control, you know, of what's going on with your mental health. And then there's like a healing guide with a deck. And then there's, you know, energy cards to like how you can tap into the energy around us, earth, air, water, fire. So the idea was just to give young people a chance to just figure it out themselves, but with some tools, you know, and learn about themselves with some tools. And so that's one of the things that we've been doing. So we're piloting them with, you know, different transitional care organizations right now.
That's awesome.
Where can they get those boxes?
I think the main thing right now would just be to contact us through the website, and then we could help them get the boxes for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. And what else is Storyboard Project going to do? Like, what are some other stories that maybe still need to be told?
Well, I keep leaning. I did a project with some in South Carolina. This big project that was designed for professional development, and I ended up interviewing social workers, and I ended up interviewing administrators and youth, and how the best practices. And then I just started again going to that aha moment of like, really, we need best practice for foster parents.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've heard all the stories. I mean, there are definitely people who are in it for the right reasons, and there are definitely people who are not. And it's like, maybe it's like they don't know. I mean, they do know, but maybe if they saw how somebody else was handling a situation, like, because there are situations, and it's like, this is what this person did when maybe a kid was difficult or a kid was crying, or, you know, and so that's kind of what I'd like to be able to do, a best practices series with parents, with foster care parents, and maybe even for foster care parents who are dealing with teenagers.
Yeah.
And so getting more people to take in teenagers, because, you know, I loved it. I mean, it was a challenge, but, you know, but you're also not having a little baby, you know, so it's, and you know that you're helping them, you know, for their launch. And I guess that's, you know, so it's like, if you can maybe look at it that way, you know, but and again, taking in all the, you know, the hard parts. And one of the things that is so interesting is Laura, like she went to this foster family, and the one we took in, and they wanted her to call them mama and daddy or whatever. And I'm like, really? She's 16, 17 years old. Why would you do that? And so that's what I mean in terms of respect.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier. It's like respect for who this person is, where they're at in their lives. And she was crying, and they're like, you need to stop crying. Well, she's not going to stop crying. Just how can you deal with that differently? It's okay that let her cry, she'll figure it out. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So those are kind of that's the documentary idea we just talked about is now kind of in my head. So we'll see.
I'm telling you, that's just where my brain went. I go, she's got to have one in the can. I know she does. She's holding back. But that's cool that you're even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that would definitely, it would shake the film festival, all of them up, because it would really tell the story of kids. These are America's kids. These are our kids. And people, I don't know if we just get busy with our lives, but we're not going anywhere. We're all here. These are our kids.
Yeah.
And I think it's a story that needs to be told, and I think you could tell it the best.
Oh, thank you. Here's my other theory about life. Okay, and I did look up some statistics. There's about 350,000 people in foster care, young people in foster care. There's about between 15 and 23, and I just looked these up, who are aging out of the system. And there's, I hope I remember this number, there's 350 million people in the United States over 18. And it's like, we can't have one person have the back of each of these young people aging out, and even just each of these young people in foster care. And that's where things like CASA comes in as well. But it's like, it's not that big of a reach.
No,
I mean,
it's
you've
not.
got 23,000 and you've got, hundreds of millions of people. And if you look at that and you're like, hey, I'm one of those hundreds of millions of people, I can do, this or that. It's I don't know. It just
doable.
doesn't feel like it's not doable.
Yeah, it is totally doable, especially with technology nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them just want to text back.
Exactly.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot. It's not a big reach. Yeah.
I'm struck by kind of you were talking earlier about, like, best practices and people doing the best they can. And what came to mind for me was, the world record is what it is until someone breaks it. And then suddenly, like, it's that, then everybody can start to break it, right? That new threshold being crossed becomes the new standard, the new expectation, the new normal. And to that, it's kind of like, well, this is the state of, our kids right now. This is the state of how we care for each other right now, until it isn't, until people get involved and start to set the new standard and break that expectation.
Right.
As you're saying, like, we got the numbers. The numbers are not the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the awareness of the problem and the recognition that it can be surmounted. And then that becomes the new expectation. And then it's much easier to meet the need and kind of, change the future of our country, because these kids are going to grow up with the resources and the person to call or the person to text. And where they end up is in large part a result of their awareness of impossible being possible, right? Yeah. It's them going to college and dropping out because they didn't know how to apply for, financial aid once the guidance counselor from their high school is no longer there with them. But that person was. And so they can, right? Or whatever the circumstance is, whatever we are potentially there to provide for them in terms of guidance and support.
Yeah.
And so I think, if I had to say there's a call to action for anything, it's figure out what you can do to support those around you, particularly those who have had a foster care experience.
Yeah. And I think that one thing, just kind of add to that is, well, there's the negative side is the implicit bias that everybody has. So it's like, kind of check that, find a way to check it and watch the stories, meet some young people, and that's to me a big thing, because a lot of the problems will be solved. Because if you're worried about helping somebody because you think they're a criminal, if you think that they're a drug addict, you think they're going to steal from you, then you're not going to do it. But I mean, I'm not saying that nobody is, but not everybody is, there's young people who just got a bad break and are really just trying to figure out how they're going to succeed in life. And then, and know that there are organizations out there, including yourself, who use volunteers. Some Right Way Foundation works with transitional kids. There's an organization called Peace4Kids in South LA who they actually go from 4 to wherever because none of those kids will want to leave the organization. There's a really cool organization in Kentucky I wanted to give a shout out to because they're called Family Scholar House. This guy was in foster care as a child, made a lot of money, built this housing, facility where young people can live in their own apartment. And not only the part of it's young people and a part of it is single parents. And there's a center in the middle where you're going, if you're a single parent for childcare, you're getting all your life skills, you're getting all your emotional support, you're getting help with any college stuff. So it's like this, they built these communities, and I think that's, where it's like, and you have an apartment, so you have your own respect. You have a feeling of something you own. You're not, living in somebody else's house. So there's definitely people all over the country that are doing things, and it's like tap into that.
Yeah.
And then also like check your
bias.
Check your bias.
Yeah, check your bias. I like that. That's a good slogan. Check your bias.
Right? Yeah.
Well, because there is. I mean, and it's the media. I'm going to throw that in that sometimes it's great. Sometimes they really show a youth and sometimes.
Yeah, they just get it completely
And then
wrong.
That's where you're, then you're back in that, spin. And even youth, there's been research that youth even look at other youth in foster care, look at youth in foster care with the same bias which is scary.
They'll interpret the narrative of the story they see to match their own.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I love that your work stands in contrast to that. Right?
Yeah.
I think who controls the narrative, right? Because representation is not the sole measure of progress. It's representation like guided by the person it's representing, right? Or in sole authority, from the person it's representing, right? And so, it sounds like there's lots of amazing opportunities for people to get involved or for, other programs from around the country to be replicated elsewhere. If people have the passion to start something themselves, it sounds like they can. If people aren't so sure about starting something themselves, it sounds like there's lots of organizations that they can get plugged into and volunteer
They can
for.
donate, they can volunteer, they can give clothing to, young people who are transitioning, need clothes for job interviews. There's so many things you could do from the littlest thing to,
to starting an organization to tell their story. Yeah. Amazing.
So.
I sincerely appreciate, besides the conversation that we just had, which was a lot of fun, all the work that you've been doing for years to promote the awareness and combat the bias and empower these kids and help these kids learn that healing is possible through like accepting themselves in their story and the parts of their story that maybe they've been told are all of who they are. And so your work allows them to put those experiences in context of this is a part of their journey and it's not over yet.
Thank you. This was a great experience. It was great meeting you, and we didn't even talk about that origin story. But it's just awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
Maybe there'll be a second follow-up episode
2.0.
There you go. Yeah. Well, thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep.